Good evening, Detroit Lakes. This is the Vikings Territory Breakdown, the fixed audio edition. We're classing this joint up. I'm your host,
It's
Joe
early.
Johnson.
Be careful.
Yeah, knock on wood. Joe Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com, FranchiseTag.com, which will launch this week, MiniIce.com, a whole bunch of different websites. I also just quickly want to apologize for some of the audio issues we've had in the last couple of weeks. That is completely my fault, and it's essentially the story of my life, as Joe.
It is.
Joe Oberly will attest. I'm joined by Mr. Oberly, who, for context, if people don't know, he and I have been podcasting together, I think, since 2016, and we used to do an in-person podcast at the Mermaid Bar in Mendota Heights or wherever, and every week it was a waking nightmare. One time we were an hour and a half into a podcast, and the plug-in fell out of the out.
Oh, God,
and we lost all of it. Another time, my parents like to come and watch me at no pressure, and my mom dropped my computer on the way in and broke it. So they had to run home and get my backup computer, which was from like 2002. It was just, I still have nightmares about that for multiple reasons.
Those early times, such great memories.
Character building.
Yes. Joe, this is the fixed audio version of Vikings Territory Breakdown. Does that mean what's coming next week? Is that, I mean, my goodness.
We like
Will
to keep
that not be fixed?
Yeah, well, I like to keep people guessing. It's
that's probably the way to go.
That's how you get engagement.
Yeah. You got to tease them, right, Tim? That's a business deal, or
you got that right.
Industry term, yeah.
Give him a taste.
There you go.
That's Mr. Tim McNiff. He joins us every week. He's no longer just the fill-in guy, the last-minute guy.
I've been promoted.
I'll just say it this way. I wanted to say it on air, but I will be. I take pride in being honest with people that I work with. That was just a power move on my part. I wanted to keep
taking off his probationary status. He's
double my salary.
One of these days, we should all go up to Detroit Lakes and just completely big time everybody. Walk down Main Street.
Really?
Yeah, I think it would be good for the brand. How you guys doing? How you feeling? It's been an interesting couple weeks in Vikings land and Minnesota sports land. I feel like, I don't know. I co-host Mr. Bob Sansevier's show, the BS show, every Monday morning, and I always kind of say that I'm not negative or pessimistic for a fact. I think I've said that to you guys as well. I'm seeing a lot of optimism out there that I don't understand, and I think the best way to explain it is they finally announced what the COVID cap was going to be. It's 182 million and some change. There's some rule with carrying over salary cap from 2020, so the Vikings get like an extra 4.8 million there. So the salary cap is, I think, 187 million for the Vikings, who are, essentially way over that number. Having Danielle Hunter, essentially tweeting about being traded. The Vikings are broke. They have question marks left and right. I don't know. I mean, am I just being me and neurotic about this, or do you guys feel like maybe Brzezinski and company have something up their sleeve?
It's always sunny in the off season. As soon as whenever the draft shows up, hope starts getting floated, all those cliches, and everybody starts getting all dreamy about what could be. I remember last year, Joe, and I bring this up for your benefit. You would not listen to all of that and predicted a 6-10 season, and you came out pretty darn close. So it's that time of year, because every realistic thing that exists, or everything we hear, it makes us think, the possibilities. And,
the pretendies. I call them the pretendies. It used to be my favorite time of year because anything is technically possible,
right.
But nothing seems possible at this point, my point.
It's so hard to piece it all together. Now, this one's different than most, and we talked a little bit about this last week, about how free agency is wide open this year because of the COVID and all these players get released. But I think we just gotta, slow the roll a little bit on the you can be optimistic. That's what's fun. That's what drives the sports. That's what keeps them in business. Good. It's a fine thing. I am not convinced yet until I see some names that are gonna play defense for this team and man these two man the trenches. And when I start seeing some of that, I can start getting a little excited, I think.
And I should add too, I feel like part of my pessimism comes from, it feels like the Vikings have seen the full extent of this team building philosophy of signing core players to these contracts and then 2 or 3 years later asking them to take a pay cut. And Anthony Barr essentially said, I'm not going to do it. They want Riley Reiff to do it. I can't imagine he will, considering how they treated him before the season started last year and how he played this year. It just feels like any sort of magic, pulling a rabbit out of their hat. I think some of the guys on the team are over it, and it could be a player empowerment thing where they're like, you know what, they promised me this, I'm going to get it or I'm going to leave. But that's part of it. I just feel like there's no way that they're going to keep a lot of these core guys like Anthony Barr, even Riley Reiff, and that, to be honest, terrifies me because that opens up the same problem that Joe and I have talked about since 2016, which is more questions on the offensive line, particularly the interior of it, which we'll get into in a minute. But I mean, Tim, are you picking up what I'm laying down here, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm struck by anyone who's an optimist if they live in Minnesota. What have you watched lately that has you saying, I think we finally got it? Because all we do is lose. I saw something on social media that says something the other day. It said it's been 6,000 days since the Twins last won a playoff game.
Wow.
Wow.
That was an amazing statistic. And they're not even one of the teams. Look at the Timberwolves, right? So we're kind of excited right now because the Wild appear to be better than most of us thought they were going to be. I think if you're watching the games against Vegas, I still don't think we're as good as Vegas, but we're competitive. This Kaprizov's fun. He's good. I did not understand the need to go out and get Talbot, and this makes the whole thing of not getting Stalock through waivers painful to me, because if we'd snuck him through, I think you got Talbot as a trading piece. That he's a good goalie. But I think Kakinen is 24 years old. I'm picturing a Martin Brodeur-like run for Capo Kakinen for the Minnesota Wild.
Wow, there's some optimism.
I just think this is what we've been looking for forever, is this young goalie who's, the economy of movement, fills a lot of the net, does just the right thing. So anyway, back to football. The Vikings. Yes, I mean, this is a year when you want to be under the cap, or you want to create that space, because every day, even just today, the Giants released an offensive lineman. The Patriots released an offensive lineman. These are guys who've played, started. Some were, Pro Bowl, and so these guys are out there. The Raiders acquired the Patriots acquired an offensive tackle from the Raiders for a 7th-round pick. You know what I mean? It's like they got to pay the guy, but I mean, you got a starting left tackle for a 7th rounder. So I think the Vikings, if you look at what they're sitting on. And I do believe they need to get back into the 2nd round. But if you look at what they're holding, they received today 2 compensatory draft picks of the 32 that were handed out because of players they lost to free agency last year. Your Trey Waynes, Mackenzie Alexander, Andrew Sendejo, J-Ron Kearse. So to go with the 10 picks they already had, this is the Vikings right now arsenal. They have a 1st-round pick, number 14 overall. They have a 3rd-round pick. They have 4 4th-round picks, 2 5th-round picks, 2 6th-round picks, and a 7th-rounder. I wanted to ask, how did Rick Spielman only get caught with 1 7th-round pick? Doesn't he have like 5?
That'll change.
Exactly. We'll have the entire 7th round.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm looking at, 4 4th-round picks gets you back into the 2nd round. I get that. But if you're able to get a starting left tackle for a 7th-rounder, what can you get for a 4th-rounder?
Wow,
I'm intrigued.
But can they afford that, though?
I've been bothered by the fact that they're not in the 2nd round. Obviously it stems from the way the trade for Ngakoue turned out, but it's this year of any year, it just bothers me really bad. I'd really like to see him move in there, but that's a very good question, Tim, because I'm thinking free agent bonanza, is going to be out there because of the COVID pressure. But maybe what's going to start happening is what you just brought up as regard you get a 7th round pick up for a starting left tackle. Maybe there's more of that kind of thing out there. Unfortunately, it all still does relate to the cap, but
Yep.
Still, you got to make room for something like that. I'm sorry, Joel. Go ahead.
No, I still look at it the way of it's really, really awful timing for the Vikings to be broke, because a lot of teams that just by happenstance have cap money that are on the fringe of contending can essentially fast forward their team building plan significantly, right? Because there's guys like you just said that wouldn't normally happen, the 7th round pick for a starting left tackle, but teams just want something because they're going to cut bait on these contracts. So my fear is that essentially you look at that draft, you look at who's in charge of the draft, you look at who might not be on the team anymore, where the needs will be, and I can't imagine Zimmer and Spielman not kids in a candy store heavily investing in the defense, which they need to do. But I just fear that, if Riley Reiff is gone in particular, what are they going to do? Move Ezra Cleveland over there, and that's a question mark. Then you have basically 2 question marks at the guard spots. Garrett Bradbury at this point is looking like a complete bust by all inclinations. And so it just feels like, while there is optimism, and it's like, wow, look at what they accomplished considering the injuries that they had, and look at how good the offense could be, or it was, but it could be even better. I have a multifaceted fear that they're going to overinvest in the defense in the draft. The line's going to be the line because they just don't really. They always think it's the last thing they care about, pretty much. And we're going to be back exactly where we already have been. It's just the same thing over and over again. It's the definition of insanity. So it's stuff like that.
Does it just come down to structuring everybody and their brother? I mean, give them money up front.
Some won't do it.
That's the problem. If they were willing to do it,
look at Dan Bailey.
Well, look at Cousins too. Like, everyone is pointing to that contract. They have to restructure that. But if they restructure it, he's going to do what he did last time, which is, okay, give me a gigantic signing bonus and then extend me for 2 more years at whatever rate. But Tim texted a topic in the agenda, essentially pointing to Dak Prescott's deal and how you can make the argument either that Cousins is being paid market rate for his services, or that he is a bargain. And I've been working on an article for like the last week. People look at Russell Wilson's 2020, and they said he was an MVP candidate. It was a career year for him. Him and Cousins had almost identical stats on the season, and people think Cousins, I don't know, I mean, Cousins gets no sort of national press. People, still half of Vikings fans think that he is garbage. But okay, so 2020 Russell Wilson, 4,212 yards, 40 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 105 passer rating. Cousins, on the other hand, is 4,265 yards, 35 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 105 rating. Boom.
What are their 2 records? And I know it's
that's what I'm waiting for. Yep. What is the wins and loss?
Well, I mean,
ultimately that affects it, Joe, in a huge way.
But you can make the argument that Russell Wilson, part of the reason that he's upset is because he's been sacked more in 9 seasons than any quarterback ever. And his line still graded out at like the 15th, 16th best line in the league, with Cousins played behind the 29th ranked line this season. It's going backward.
Maybe
if the statistics are that similar, I don't put. I mean, do you guys really think that Cousins?
Well, look what Russell Wilson did against the Vikings. He came Joey after Cousins took him down, and they crapped out at the one inside the 5. Russell Wilson took the ball with how many minutes left, how many seconds left, walked up the field and scored the winning touchdown.
Exactly.
Yeah,
there's
but
a difference.
do you put that on Cousins?
Not completely, no, but partially. And he's the guy. I mean, it comes with the business. I mean, yes.
In that game, Cousins had 276 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Russell Wilson had 240 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. The only difference was that he had that game-winning drive, whereas I think Cousins did throw that horrible interception after halftime. I was at your house for that game, right? But you could also say, well, look at Cousins did against the Saints. I think that he did a lot this season to show that the only real bright spot that we saw in 2020 was the offense. And so my point is that not that he's as good as Russell Wilson because he isn't, but that he's close enough statistically to make the argument that he's just making market rate. And so everyone that blames Cousins' contract on the financial situation for the Vikings, I think, are overlooking the fact that other teams are paying their quarterbacks the same or more, and they're not having the same issues. So there has to be something more to it.
I would agree that Cousins is not the garbage quarterback that many in this town say that he is. I mean, there's people that just want him gone for no other reason. I would say he gets paid more than he produces in the win-loss column. But, his statistics are good. Now, go and see how much of his statistics came up in garbage time versus how many of Russell Wilson's. He didn't have as much garbage time because he ended up winning those games. So I don't know. I mean, it's you make a great point, and I'm not going to argue against it. I'm not a Cousins basher that wants him gone, because I look around the rest of the league and you're not going to get that much. But if you mentioned to me earlier, we were talking, I used to work with the Timberwolves, and I saw how Kevin Garnett's contract hampered that team being able to build a championship contender. And you got to believe that Cousins does as well. There's other reasons, too, because of what's going on, where the Vikings have spent their other money, but, a big chunk of it belongs to Kirk, I think.
And
and I think when you're going to get that kind of to money, if you have to be at your best in the biggest games on the biggest stage. You just do, and he's not. That we've just seen it too many times. And Joe, you really put on a good example in the sense that he actually did play well that game at Seattle. Except for that one the interception you were talking about, which was a killer. But otherwise than that, and I like pull for the guy. I think most people do. It's like I want him to do well in a primetime game. I want him to win a game that starts after 3:00. But he doesn't feel pressure.
I won't
holding on to the football. When he's getting sacked, he's gotten better about that. I mean, I think the guy really, 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 really does want to be a winner here in Minnesota. I think he really does want to win the Super Bowl for the Vikings. That still doesn't mean so do I. I can play quarterback for the Vikings. I mean, there's just guys who have it and guys who don't. And whatever that it factor is, I just don't think Kirk Cousins has it.
Yeah, I mean, I won't argue that everybody knew before the Vikings signed him that he could not sense pressure, blindside pressure. I totally presumed when I was literally the first person at Vikings media to go out and say the Vikings need, I'll post the article in the article for this episode, the Vikings need to go all in on Cousins. I was under the impression that they would shore up the offensive line when they brought him in there, because if I know that he's bad under pressure, they should know that. And I just feel like they haven't put him in the best position to win, and I think that there's a myriad of reasons as to why that is. We'll actually go to commercial really quickly and get back to that here on KDLM Sports Radio Detroit Lakes. This is the Vikings Territory Breakdown. Be right back. And we are back at the Vikings Territory
Breakdown. You're wrong. You're wrong. Now, we talked after. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, we had to cut. I get so emotional about Cousins. I just feel like the larger point that I was trying to make is to ask you, and I'll go to you, Tim. Do you think Cousins is overpaid? B, do you think he will restructure his contract? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to ask him to. I mean, that would add 2 more years, and I just don't think they're ready to go down that rabbit hole again. They've already done it, and so I don't think that happens. So do I think he is overpaid? Well, the market is just so inflated, and there are worse quarterbacks out there. He just wasn't, to me. I mean, I just don't think he's been what we were hoping he was. And to the point you made too about them not fixing the offensive line, in the 2019 season, when they started to use play action and they started to sprint him out, he throws better on the run than he does as a pocket passer.
Him and Russell Wilson are the best play action quarterbacks in the league, but by a large margin.
Well, and I think, you got a kid in Kansas City who's pretty good at it too.
Yeah.
So I just don't understand why they got away from it. And sometimes you need the 11 on 11, or you need to know what's happening from a coaching standpoint. Were teams dictating? Do they know that too? I'm guessing they probably do, and we're making it difficult. But I just don't see how that could really be, because you still have to respect Dalvin Cook first.
Yep.
And if you're using that stretch zone, you're showing the ball, and he's heading that way. If you're a defense, you have to take at least 2 steps to that direction. You have to. And that should buy Kirk Cousins the times he needs. And unless the defense is really going to gamble every time on sending a blindside guy, banking on the fact that Cousins is coming back into you off the ball fake. That would be the only thing you'd have to do. And so I don't know why they got away from it, but they got away from it this past year, and it was not to Kirk's benefit. And you're right. The offense was the bright spot. Well, they got lucky by landing Jefferson, and he developed through the course of the year, and they still have Thielen. They still have, Cook if he's healthy, and he's about as good as they come. And the offensive line was marginally better, I think, this year than it had been. Reiff was certainly better than he had been. So, I don't know what you do with him. I think there's so many guys coming on the market. It depends how much they cost and what he's willing to do. And if I'm a guy right now and they're asking me to restructure my contract, I have to. If I'm Anthony Barr, that's a heck of a bold statement to say absolutely not, because unless you are an all-pro, you're at risk.
And I don't think we saw a huge drop-off in play when Barr didn't play. Like, Eric Wilson was better, worse against the pass, but better against the run. I do think there's a weird dichotomy that I'm trying to figure out and write an article about, that during the season, it seemed like there were all these bright spots on the offensive line. Riley Reiff. There were some individual performances that I think, from a PFF level, were graded okay or good. There were weeks where they would say, they send out PFF's Minnesota Twitter says here's the top graded players for Minnesota. A couple times, there was 2 or 3 linemen on that. But then if you look at as a unit, they did not perform well. Luke Braun, who used to do a podcast with Joe and I, wrote a really great article at the tail end of December that I sourced in the article that I just wrote about the Vikings ignoring the offensive line, that Ezra Cleveland is not a guard. He has been statistically awful against he's good at, in the run game, but he's been really bad against pass rush. He's given up a ton of pressures. It's not his skill set. It's not his wheelhouse. He's not playing on the side that he's used to, so on and so forth. Move him back to tackle. Then you look at a guy like Bradbury, who essentially people are saying is a bust. He's just been bad. Some people say just because the guards around him have been bad, so it's not his fault. But I put this in the agenda. Dustin Baker. Oh yeah, sorry.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
If Ezra Cleveland is not good at pass protection and he is good at run, do I, Tim? I'll ask you. I mean, do I not understand how the line works? Don't you want your stronger pass protectors at tackle? Why would we move him back out there? I mean, we don't want him out there if he's a better run blocker. Don't we want him as a guard?
You're facing 2 different types of players. In the interior, he's more of a vertical guy. I mean, he's a taller guy. And that's why when they were putting him at guard, I had questions about that. I mean, just because he can run well doesn't necessarily mean that that's where he's supposed to be. And usually guards are more compact, and pad level is a big deal. And if you're Cleveland and you're 6'7", and I'm not sure. I don't know if he is that tall, but I think he is. And so suddenly you got a guy who's maybe 6'2", and he's 330 or 40 pounds, and he's going to pressure, bull rush you. That's a problem. Pad level's an issue. And so I don't know that, again, we have to know what was the scheme. Was he just the best option they had there? Why were they putting him there? I have questions about that. But the thought is that he would move back to a tackle position and he would face an edge rusher. Now, Khalil Mack obviously is no bargain, but, you generally have guys who are more under 300 pounds coming from the edge and are more speed guys, strong, but that's something that hopefully his length and his wingspan would help him out there.
Yeah, there was a quote from Kubiak during training camp right after they drafted Cleveland that really frustrated me, and I've quoted it multiple times, where he essentially said, we want to start Cleveland at a position that he is wholly uncomfortable and unused to. So we're giving him a lot of reps at guard. He said, the problem with Cleveland is that he keeps defaulting back to what he knows, and we need to break him of that. And I got visions of TJ Clemmings, because it's like, yeah, he's going back to his muscle memory because he's only ever played left tackle, and now you have him playing a different position on the opposite side, and your rationale is that he hasn't done it, therefore you want him to try? What? We had Matt Burke on the show. He was converted to center from tackle. I get that happens. I get that you can have success doing it, but I never understood the rationale. And then I think people just got sort of rose-colored glasses about his performance because he was better than Samia, and Samia was awful. And so, I don't know what the problem is with the offensive line, but I don't feel the main component of Dustin's article that in the counterpoint that I disagreed with was that there's this optimistic nucleus that the offensive line can build around, and that is Bradbury, O'Neal, and Cleveland. And I don't think that two of those three guys are established enough to make that claim. I think O'Neal obviously is good, but if you do move Cleveland to tackle, you don't know if he's going to perform well or not. That's a question mark. Bradbury, again, has not been good. Then you would have, I don't know who you would have play guard. You'd have to draft, guys, which I'm sure they'll do in the 7th round. And so I feel like it's just more of the same, and I am legitimately tired of this topic. It comes up almost every single week, but it's incredibly important because I do feel like with time, because that's the key component to what you're talking about with Cousins, the rollout, the play action. The reason that performed well is because it gave him enough time to complete a forward pass, which is kind of the goal of the entire process. And so it just feels like they're moving backwards in that regard. I just can't imagine a Zimmer-led draft taking Wyatt Davis at 14 as opposed to a defensive lineman, or, there's news that Mike Hughes is essentially done after this season. He was a bad pick. He's probably the personification of them prioritizing corners over everything else, because they could have taken 4 plug-and-play interior linemen between Hughes and Brian O'Neal, and they didn't.
That is true.
And they didn't need him at the time. They already had 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick at their 3 corner spots with the nickel, and they took him in the first round. It didn't make sense. It ended up making sense because of what happened, but it just feels like they're going to do exactly. I have no faith in Zimmer learning from his mistakes, because last year's draft, you had 15 picks, 5 of them were DBs. The only guy that you drafted that.
But you're putting all this on Zimmer.
I just have to believe that he has that much control over, because of the way that they draft. I mean, he's a cornerback guru, and they keep drafting corners, for example. I feel like last year, again, they had 15 picks, 5 were DBs. The only one that they drafted that actually played guard was the 15th pick, and it was the pick before Mr. Irrelevant, the second to last pick in the entire draft. It's just
Joe, I don't think you want him to fix the offensive line, because if they do, then it's all on your Big Ten buddy Cousins.
I've had nightmares about that. To be completely honest with you, because I'm kind of all in on this. Clearly, I mean, we're 29 minutes into the show and it's still topic 1, but it's just I feel like more of the same.
I think when the draft comes, my thought, Joe, is that they're going. I could be saying it to either one of you guys, couldn't I?
Yes.
But I think they're going to trade back. I think they're going to. I don't think they'll pick at 14. I don't. I think that, and
really?
maybe something changes, but I see them moving back and accumulating picks. Hopefully, using something to get back in the second round, and I could see them, or maybe late in the first round, moving back into the 20s, and then maybe moving into the 20s. Maybe they move back into the first round with all those fourth round picks, and they get their offensive lineman and they get an edge rusher. But I just think that they had no pressure on the quarterback last year. And now you've got Danielle Hunter making noise, and I know you guys both sleep better now that Stephen Weatherly is back. But I don't know that that's necessarily the answer either.
Let me ask you this, Tim. Do you think they held on to their first-round pick last year because of the sole fact that Justin Jefferson dropped in their lap? Because they would have, years past, they would trade the back. They've done it many times, and what you're talking about has happened. We've seen it. They've, you sit there. I've sat there, to cover them on opening night of draft, waiting for this big pick, and they trade back. You just kind of, oh my goodness. But do you think that that's why they stuck with that pick?
I don't think it was him specifically. I mean, the fact that he did slip was something I'm sure that they were enamored with. But to me, it was eerily reminiscent of the year they took Laquan Treadwell, where there was no receivers off the ball, maybe one receiver off the board, when they were like 4 picks away.
Yep.
And then like 3 or 4 went right in front of them.
Yep.
And
Josh
at that
Jackson.
point, I'm going, go with another player. Go with another player. Go with another player. Laquan Treadwell. I'm like, okay, I hope you're right. And they weren't. And, they bought damaged goods, and they've been drafted for a position. They drafted for a need. And I think that's where they were last year too at receiver. They knew that they had lost, their best receiver. I mean, I know Thielen and Detroit Lakes and all the rest of it, but I mean, they'd lost an impact receiver. They needed an impact receiver. They didn't land one in free agency, and so they needed to get something in that draft. And they were sitting there, and they just got luckier than anything.
They really did.
Philadelphia screwed up.
We're going to get letters now because Tim just called Diggs their best receiver.
So we did a live video marathon of the draft last year, and we're going to do another one this year. And we were joined by Mike Tice before the draft, and he gave us all a lot of views on the offensive line because everyone was pointing to the O-line. And as we got closer to the first round pick, I was on with Deshaun, Vaughn, and Kirby.
I just got a note.
What?
I'm sorry. Oh, the Vikings release Riley Reiff.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
I'm not. That's what it says.
I'm not as surprised as you are, Joe Johnson.
No, I'm just saying the timing of it. It's literally what we're talking about right now. That's very, very strange.
I think he was, he did the restructure for him last year, and his play was solid enough where he probably didn't think he had to do it again.
That's totally it. And I'm sure he was mad about it too.
Well, and the thing that strikes me, you guys, is that we still have Anthony Barr on this team. I mean, if you watch the Super Bowl and you watch the linebacking cores for either of those two teams, tell me which guy reminded you of Anthony Barr.
Nobody.
Yeah. No, they ran sideline to sideline making plays. I mean, just younger guys just running. Yeah. I mean, the stuff that Kendricks does week in, week out. And Barr's always had so much potential.
You know what I think is going to happen with Barr?
I count fingers on one hand how many times he's actually shown up and made a play in a situation where we needed him to.
I've always said that there's been games against the Packers, the Monday Night Football game, or against the Bears with Khalil Mack, where those defenses have been so mean and physical and stifling. And for all the statistical whatevers of Zimmer's peak defenses, the third down stat from 2017, I've never once watched a game with his defense and thought they were out physicaling or that they were dominating in that regard. I do have a theory, though, that if you put Anthony Barr in a 3-4, which is what he's designed to do, I mean, all he did at UCLA was basically rush the quarterback. If you let him play in a system like Khalil Mack, he'll probably have an amazing season, and we'll say, well, that's why you should have used Anthony Barr differently and not had a guy who's an amazing pass rusher drop back into coverage and do all these things that Zimmer asks him to do. But in regards to the Reiff thing, that's a nightmare.
Joe, let me ask you a question. Does this set in motion what we were kind of touching on, that Cleveland moves to a tackle and they're drafting guard as soon as they possibly can.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's what will happen. I mean, I'm not completely. Everyone kind of compared Cleveland to Brian O'Neill, but he would play against a lot of top tier talent in the Mountain West Potato Conference or whatever. And so I don't know how he'll do. It just what it does is it's like the anti Bradbury move. You know, when we drafted Bradbury, it's like, oh, they just upgraded 2 spots because now Elflein can move to his quote unquote natural position of guard. This is kind of the opposite. It opens up 3 gigantic holes on the offensive line because you don't know how Cleveland will do at left tackle, and then you literally have nothing at left and right guard. And so I'm hoping that they will end up taking a guy like Wyatt Davis if he's available, because he's a plug and play guy. He could be the next Steve Hutchinson for the Vikings. But again, you know, It always feels like the line is an afterthought for this team, and you know that's one of the things.
There's nothing to this release, Joe. It's just the Minnesota Vikings announced the team has terminated the contract of Riley Reiff, and that's it. This is a happy parting between companies here. So.
I don't know that it's necessarily animosity, because as I was throughout the day saw that the Patriots had released a guard who's a former All-Pro, and the Giants had released a starting guard. And I just think what you're going to see is Cleveland's going to move to, either. And nobody ever says about shifting O'Neill from right tackle to left tackle, so I probably shouldn't go there. But I guess I picture Cleveland going
wrote
to
about
left tackle.
What do you think about that?
I don't know why it wouldn't happen. I mean, he's a very structurally sound, blocker. I mean, he's a fine right tackle, I think, a very good one. He's coming off his rookie contract after this year, so he's going to cost money. But why wouldn't you? Because people go, you can't move the left tackle because he'll cost more money. Well, if he keeps the quarterback upright and you win games, I think you'll pay that money. He's not built really like your prototypical left tackle, but he has the long arms. He's got the long levers. He has good feet. I don't know why you wouldn't.
I worry about that.
I was against it.
Yeah, I am too. I worry about it, I should say. I would love to see it, because from the get-go, that guy I think he's great. But I've seen the Vikings move other people around, and, I've talked to some of the linemen back in the days. Now it depends, got to consider the source. The guy from Slippery Rock, what was his name?
I know who you're talking about.
Anyway, he Brandon Fusco, he said that, I asked him about moving from one guard to the other guard, and he says it's a change in footwork, and it really takes a long time to make that transition. And he never did, at least not while I was with the Vikings, and they let him go. And I mean, you're switching, there is something there. I mean, maybe Brian O'Neill is such a great tackle that he can make that transition seamlessly. But to me, it's a concern. It once again now would weaken 2 positions if he can't make that transition.
That's how I wish, I guess, I would have articulated it last season, because I just felt like it's a risk, and he's already basically locked in at the right tackle spot for the next 10 years, contract willing. But I'm more open to it now, considering the situation. I would feel more comfortable with him at left tackle and Cleveland at right tackle than vice versa. But one of the other reasons, Cole, you nailed really the take on that. But the one other thing I would add to it is that I was against it because it was yet again this team shuffling guys around in lieu of investing in them. I know they've drafted, some guys in the first, second, or third round these last 2 years, but they always just seem to shuffle the same, TJ Clemmings effect over and over again, as opposed to either signing free agents or retaining depth. I mean, getting rid of Pat Elflein last season for no reason. It didn't benefit them financially. The dead cap money, I mean, it didn't matter. It's not like they turned around and used that money to invest in a free agent or anything. They just let him go, and then they needed him because Ezra Cleveland got hurt, and it was like, why are they allergic to depth on this line. I mean, every time I feel like they have some semblance of depth, they cut somebody, and it doesn't. I just don't understand it. I feel like Zimmer was bullied by offensive linemen as a kid, and he just like loathes the position. But I don't know. This Riley
There is
Reiff
one
stuff.
solution. They could keep O'Neill where he is and have Cousins throw left-handed. Then he would be on his blind side.
Well,
No?
But you're discounting the fact. Didn't O'Neill play left tackle in college?
Ooh, that's a good point.
Oh,
Did he? I don't.
I mean, you usually, and maybe he didn't, but usually if a guy comes out rated at high, it's because he played that position in college.
you're right. He did.
Yeah, so I just don't. And sometimes guys say that, oh, it's a totally different. Yeah, sure, you're stepping with your left foot instead of your right foot. But chances are, by the time you've gotten up, you've played multiple positions because you had to. When you were a sophomore, there was a senior, and you weren't as good as him. But you know what? If they could put you at this position, so you played that position because you weren't ready for that prime position yet. And so I discount that to some degree. I really do.
Okay.
And I don't know. I think to me, it's more like, are you making yourself better by making that move? Have you now moved to a dominant right tackle and made him a so-so left tackle, and you now have a so-so right tackle?
Yeah.
I mean, you always want to be making the team better, and maybe they believe Cleveland really is that guy. I didn't see him at guard. I mean, I didn't see it, the move. Why were they doing that? I didn't get it unless they were just that desperate. So my guess is that I think that he goes to tackle one side or the other, and
O'Neill takes the other one. Yeah.
Well, but I think they're probably going to, there's the draft, but there's also this free agent market, you guys. And we just took Riley's money off the books, and if they take Riley and Barr, now we go from $5 million over to like $11 million under or more than that, and that should get you a good guard. That should, more than just a stopgap guy. That should get you a good guy. And maybe you do make a trade with the team that's in a similar situation that you are, where you send one of your 4 fourth-round picks. I mean, I don't imagine, what you'd get for a 4th-round pick if Tennessee traded a guy who was a number 1 pick last year and a 7th-round pick to Miami, to get for almost nothing back. For the Dolphins, I'm like, they're basically taking this guy off the Titans' hands. Why didn't the Vikings go for that guy? And obviously he has some issues, but I mean, I don't know that we're in the position to be turning down any warm bodies at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I just hope that they, one thing that kind of solidified my frustration with this philosophy of how they run the offensive line was seeing Mike Remmers, in the Super Bowl. And granted, he had to flip sides because of the Achilles injury, but that's because at the last minute he had to flip sides. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
He otherwise played well because. Ooh, guess what? They did this strange thing. They signed him a tackle to play tackle. They when we had Remmers and Reiff the same offseason, it was like, wow, they really are going to fix the offensive line. They're serious about it. And then they flipped Remmers to guard, and he'd never played it before. And he was awful, historically bad. Him and Tom Compton were historically bad. It's just, I hope if they can do what you guys are talking about, they find somebody who, I don't know, has played the position that they're signing them or drafting them for, and they just invest like any normal team would. And then you get into the question of, Coach Tice, when he's been on the show, he's multiple times kind of bemoaned the zone blocking scheme in general, as he doesn't, Matt Burke said the same thing. When it comes down to the end of the game, I'd rather have these big, beefy, anchoring O-linemen that can pick up, 4th and short, as opposed to these quote-unquote athletic, smaller guys who can run and get to the second level. I mean, they got rid of Josh Klein because he couldn't get to the second level, although he was actually something. That's the nucleus I believed in, O'Neill and Josh Klein, but they got rid of him because of this idea that he couldn't get to the second level, despite the fact that he had an amazing season with the Vikings. So I don't know. I'm a little freaked out, to be completely honest with you. I mean, I was before, but I didn't expect the Reiff news to hit this soon. Yikes.
Now, there was a couple of years ago, I think it was you made about the Mike Hughes draft, and there was a guard that was from out of UTEP, and I want to say Hernandez.
Will
He plays for the
Hernandez.
Giants.
Yeah, Will Hernandez. Yep.
And I remember somebody writing and saying he's more of a road grader. He's not the type of player the Vikings are looking for. And I'm like, he's exactly the type of player the Vikings should be looking for if he's a road grader. I mean, if that's just it. If you think about Pittsburgh's sustained run of success, and everybody always wants tribute to the head coaches, but I believe it's more really to a philosophy of what you're looking for in the draft. And they get guys who are horses, hogs. You know what I mean? They're usually not smaller than the other team that's across the line of scrimmage.
And it's funny because Zimmer's
an
old school coach, right? You think he would want the old school sort of beefy linemen, especially considering they're a run-first team. It's just, not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but it just seems very kind of strange to me.
Yeah, I just think it's you gotta, if you're going to be a Bear, be a Grizzly. I mean, it's my point being, you're in a physical game, a physical people, and there's only so much trickeration, you ever really want to be able to do. And the point you made is exactly right. I go back to my high school experience of having coached at one of the best teams in 5A, but when you had to play against Eden Prairie, you just knew they were going to be bigger and stronger than you up front. And sooner, at some point in the game, your guys had to put their hand on the ground, their guys had to put their hand on the ground, and you had to win. And that was a hard one to win because they just always seem to be bigger and stronger than you. And if you're going to be in a game of big strong people, you should need to be drafted big strong people. I just think that size matters in this game, and I know the game's changed and it's passing and all the rest of it, but man, I still love to be able to open up holes on the offensive line.
Yeah,
I just was reading some details here. The Vikings will save about $11 million in cap space in 2021. That's because Reiff had been due a $5 million roster bonus on March 19th. So that's why it's happening now. I guess that's why it's taking place. So that helps them a little bit cap wise. They needed to after the announcement of what the cap was going to be, 182 and change or whatever for this year. So. Well, we'll see what they do with it. Once again, we're going backwards on the line rather than forwards.
Yeah,
the cut comes on offense rather than defense. Barr's still there, but Reiff is gone.
Do you guys? And I won't hold you to it. Do you anticipate Barr will be on the roster?
Yes, because they're hurting. Their core players are, they struggled so much last year, and he's under contract. He's a player you get back that you didn't have last year because of injury, and they're probably going to have to try to restructure him. I don't know if they will, but I think they need him because I don't think you can back. I mean, if he's gone, then you have to backfill that space even more. I mean, what's his name? Eric Wilson is certainly there, but he's gonna ask for a heck of a lot more money too. So what do you want? Eric Wilson, who had a standout season, given an opportunity, or Barr, which is the captain of Zimmer's defense. I mean, it may be different. You guys want something different than Zimmer does, and I'm saying that's what Zimmer would want him back. That's my point.
I think Barr is Zimmer's favorite player on the defense. Yeah. I think he asks him to do a tremendous amount of things, and I don't think that. I think it's the last. They're going to try to make it work, is my point. That raises the question, though. I mean, Tim, I'll kick this to you. Do you think that Anthony Harris is going to be on the team still, or do you think he's a foregone conclusion situation?
I do. I don't see how they can afford him. So I don't think he'll be back. And back to your previous question, I'm afraid Anthony Barr is going to be back on this team again.
That's a really good point.
I just don't want it, and I can't hide the fact that I just think that he's one of those guys. I just remember this thing from NFL Films or a college game where it's back in the 60s, early 70s, where this college coach is recorded saying to a kid, your potential is going to get me fired. And so Barr's one of these guys who shows up and looks really good in his uniform. And I remember recovering a fumble against Tampa and returning it for a touchdown or something. And I remember him obviously taking out Aaron Rodgers. But past that, I mean, if anybody other than Eric Kendricks on that defense is supplanted Harry Hitman as Mike Zimmer's favorite player, he's not watching the same game and the same team that I am.
Yeah,
because I just think when they got Barr, I was so happy, and I thought he was really good his rookie year. And then when they were going back to UCLA, I'm like, really? because UCLA doesn't win a lot. This is where we want to go. And Kendricks has been just a revelation. He's a wonderful player, great against the run, even better against the pass. Sideline to sideline. And I thought Harrison Smith regressed this past year. Scary, in the wrong place at the wrong time, bad near the end of the season. So I don't know how much gas
do you attribute that to, I heard a lot of people, and as everyone knows, I'm not a huge X's and O's guy, but a lot of people are saying because of the youth and inexperience at the corner position, they were essentially doing a lot of like cover 2 deep safety stuff, asking for both Harris and Harrison Smith to do a lot more than they usually did. So I think they maybe got away from their core mission. He had a lot more interceptions this year than I think he had in years past. I think that's part of it. But that was why they stymied Aaron Rodgers the week after the bye. They just did a bunch of cover 2 stuff, and for whatever reason, Aaron Rodgers couldn't figure it out. But yeah, I don't know. Again, this raises all these questions on defense, which to me says that a lot of these picks are going to be, defensive line, even though we got the news that Michael Pierce should be back. But I don't, and we talked about this last week, but the Danielle Hunter situation, do you feel like the tweet thing that he did was to create leverage or urgency with the Vikings, or do you think he is just going kind of full digs on the team and causing problems on social media? I mean, it was a very specific and targeted move, and I'm sure his agent cleared it, and maybe that he didn't like what Spielman said in the press conference about, he hasn't asked to be traded. He also hasn't asked to be the highest paid player in the defensive player in the NFL, and then all of a sudden that comes out. I feel like that situation is, every variable there is bad. He is underpaid, but he did sign a contract. He also is coming off like a catastrophic injury, so you don't know if he'll be able to play at the same level. But in his mind, he also is saying, well, I need to make as much money as possible because look at my neck. I could be done on any given Sunday. But all of those things kind of point to the fact that the Vikings really can't afford to give him, Donald money at this point. I mean, if they did that, they would have over 40% of their salary cap at the 182 or 187 in Danielle Hunter, Dalvin Cook, and Kirk Cousins. That 40% on 3 guys. I just can't see how that's going to happen.
No, I think that it's troubling, and I think what happens is these guys, you sign a contract. And it used to be you lived up to it, but now it's like you sign a contract and you wait and hear what all your friends think about it. In this case, all his friends also play in the NFL, and if they hear he's got a bad contract, or he did a stupid thing, now he feels bad. He feels like the team cheated him, and so I don't know if it's a situation that can be repaired. He's under contract. If it's my job, and obviously it's not, but if it's my job, I get him back there and I get a season out of him. And if he's healthy and can play, then I've got to deal him. I just think it's a Raiders and Khalil Mack thing. If you can load up for picks for the future and do that, because if you already have a Kirk Cousins, you already have a Dalvin Cook, you can't afford him to. And it's a young man's game, and you want young guys, especially I think on defense. I think on offense, well, you just want guys who can run. You can put a lot of fast people to the ball, and that's young guys. And so I think that there'll be another Danielle Hunter, but it would be disappointing. He's been wonderful. I'd love to see him play his whole career in Minnesota, but I just don't know how you make that happen without severely compromising this team in many different ways.
You're killing me, Tim. You're just killing me.
Like Seinfeld said, at the end of the day, you're cheering for laundry. Because the players always change, they're always going to change, and so your team against the other team's uniforms. I don't know. I mean, if Green Bay's really letting Aaron Jones walk away, I mean he's good. I mean, that's a good back, and they've got another pretty good back. But Aaron Jones is an upstanding citizen. He plays the game the right way. I mean, that's really devaluing the running back position. If you're going to let him go away, that's a good thing for the Vikings and a bad thing for the Packers.
And it was such a positive thing. I mean, you can't really overstate the impact that he had on Rodgers' MVP season. I mean, he finally had a weapon in the run game, something he hadn't had for really his entire career there. But yeah, I just think, I don't know. This gets back to the point of, I don't understand why the owners. I mean, I do understand where it comes from because it's the NFL, and they could punish me for saying this, but they nickel and dime more than any other league. Everything is trademarked, and you can't even watch YouTube videos without. They want to get all those clicks, blah blah blah. I just don't understand why the owners didn't say, you know what, these players risked their safety more so than they already do, but to put a season together. We could have had no season because of COVID, and sure, we lost all of the ticket revenue, but let's just put the cap either where it was or up, just increase it to 210 or whatever it normally would have been. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these guys now are unemployed, and they came through for the league, and the league still probably made $7-8 billion. It's a crisis that needn't happen, and it throws a lot of these teams, multi-year team building plans out the window. I don't know. I just feel like it's a really bad look for the league to do that, considering the context of it. Am I right,
They
Joe?
don't care. These owners don't care.
That's kind of the long and short of it.
It's all about the dollar.
It's a bottom line business. There's no two ways about it. I just like anything else, when you start talking in billions of dollars, you wonder why they care so much about it. But I just remember being frustrated back in the day when Carl Pohlad wanted to contract the Twins. And
I forgot about that.
Hearing somebody say, well, they don't like to make bad deals because it's, it looks badly on them. It's like, they got to win. And I just, why would, at the end of your life, after you've made all this money and done all these things, why wouldn't you want your legacy to go out with, look what you did to keep, this team here and blah, 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 blah. Eventually they stayed, but.
So think of, Joe, the point you're making, if you go back to 1984, that is exactly what Calvin Griffith did. I mean, everyone at the time would say all these terrible things about the Griffith family and how cheap they were, and they were, and they were racist, and they were. But at the end of the day, he could have gotten more money from someone else that would have taken that team somewhere else. He wanted them to stay in Minnesota for the people of Minnesota. Carl Pohlad bought that team the way he's bought everything else when he was here on this earth, at a great discount. And it was loaded. It already had Kirby Puckett. It already had Kent Herbeck. It already had Tom Bernansky and Gary Gaetti. It was loaded with young talent. And I remember, he's a hero. He saved baseball. I'm like, no, he didn't. He didn't save baseball. Calvin Griffith kept baseball here. So he did that. But to find other guys to do it now, you're right. I talk about the players, judging each other by their contract. Well, the owners judge each other by the deals that they have too. How much did you pay for your stadium? How much did you pay for that guy? And if you do a bad deal, you're letting down the rest of the group.
Because it's a pool, they pool their money. Yeah, that's a good point. What was the name of the commissioner of baseball back when the guy wasn't he from Milwaukee? The one when the Twins almost got contracted.
Bud Selig.
That's it. I was in college, and I remember hating that guy, even though I'm not the biggest baseball fan. Yeah, I mean, it makes for good fodder. It's good red meat for articles. I mean, our traffic is insane because everyone, again, the pretendies are here, and there's a lot of different options. But it is a little, to me, it's just a little tone deaf, considering. And everyone is like, well, they could have opted out, but a lot of these guys, the roster spot's not guaranteed. So if they opt out, they're going to lose their spot. I mean, that's just the way it was. And so I just feel like, they could have avoided this in a multitude of ways. But, it's interesting. I mean, I'm still kind of in shock, to be honest with you, in regards to the Riley Reiff thing. But I would be remiss if I did not bring up, Tim, you wrote another amazing article that is live on Purple PTSD right now under the McNiff's Musings. I wanted to have you kind of describe the piece and let people know about it.
Well, thank you, Joe. I was greatly affected by the passing of Mark Pavlich from the Miracle on Ice team. And I've had a very lucky thing happen in my life where, so I was a junior in high school when they pulled off the Miracle on Ice. And it just only way I knew any of those guys was reading about them at the paper. I'd seen Broughton, at the state tournament and at the University of Minnesota, but I didn't go to games. My family couldn't afford that sort of stuff. So these guys, I got to know most of them, in later years, and because of NBC having Olympic contracts and everything, I got to go to like Neil Broughton's place in River Falls and Bill Baker's maxillofacial surgery center, and where he was doing that, and get to know these guys and get their stories. But I never really talked to Pavlich, and he was always very reclusive and but a really interesting part of that team, and played, had assists on 2 of the 4 goals in that game against Russia. I mean, Mark Johnson scored twice, but Pavlich got the first one to Buzzy Schneider, and he's the one that dug that puck out of the corner and put it on a Ruzioni stick for the golden goal. And to have the issues that he had at the end of his life, and to talk to the teammates about it, and how much they were worried about him, and how much they, kind of wanted him to, were hoping that he was going to, get it together. I fully expect, and I'm no doctor, but I fully expect that, when the autopsy results come back, he will have been found to have CTE. And I think that, that will explain some of the issues that he went through. But my goal was not to write that piece. And I had to tell these guys that. And I went to his former line mates on that team, and they were the only ones that Herb Brooks left them fairly much intact the entire experience. So 6 to 8 months playing together, of John Harrington on one wing, Buzzy Schneider on the other wing, and Mark Pavlich in the center. And, and I asked him, I said, you guys, I don't want to talk about anything he went through with the guy, any of the mental health stuff. Tell me about him as a teammate and as a player. And that's what the piece focuses on, is his hockey legacy.
And that's why it was so good. I read it, and I read a lot of the stuff on Pavlich this past week. Having known it, my sister has a friend who dated Mark's brother, and so this connection. So we've always kind of paid attention to him post those years, Miracle on Ice and his career. But this piece took it to where other stories didn't, and I really enjoyed it, to really find out about just what kind of player he was, what kind of teammate, and what the things he did. And we were talking beforehand. I mentioned to Tim, I said, it really brought home to me how important a center man is on your team. To have, the Wilders going through struggles right now that they're always still searching for centers, and to have one like that who sets you up. And the great quote, it doesn't matter, just go to the net, I'll get the puck on your stick. And that's what he did with Buzzy Schneider. What a great quote. I loved it. It's a great piece.
And Buzzy saying back, yeah, I guess I can do that.
Do you guys remember, I mean, this is such a stupid question, but like watching that game? Like, Joe, do you remember vividly watching that game? My sister, my sister played for the Gophers, and she also played on my varsity hockey team her senior season, and got a lot of notoriety. Patrick Royce used to come watch her play. She got recruited by everybody, Ivy League schools and everything. She went to a camp up in near Detroit Lakes, ironically, that was run by Tretiak, the goalie for the Soviet Union, and I always would go and pick her up because she went there like 3 years in a row, and I always wondered if the camp was in the middle of not to insult Detroit Lakes, but it was past Detroit Lakes. It was literally in the middle of nowhere, and it felt to me like
they sent him to Siberia.
That's exactly what he did it himself.
Couple things about that. Your question, Joe. So the game started at about 2:00 Central Time. And it was not televised, and they had plans to record it, and they were going to run it tape delay that night. So my high school did not let out until 2:50, but I was home in front of the radio before 2:00 with my lab mix dog, Lucky, who was not lucky that day because I was a basket case. I didn't expect him to win, but the longer the game went, and the radio reception wasn't that great. And when they scored and went in front 4-3, and you couldn't tell what was static and what was just cheering, and it was just an amazing thing. I was just pacing the house, and when they were counting down, and of course they didn't have the Al Michaels call until that night, And I had a basketball game that night, and I played for White Bear Mariner at the time, and I lived about 2.5 blocks from the school. But as this is winding down, I'm putting on my shoes, went out the door, run 2.5 blocks to the high school. And there was a girls' junior varsity game going on that, and I ran through the doors, through the cafeteria, and into the gym, and went right to the scorer's table. And I stood there for like a second, and everybody's like, I'm like almost out of breath, and waited. And I go, "Can I say something?" And I like just grabbed the PA and I pushed down the thing, and I said, "Final score from Lake Placid: Russia 3, United States 4. We beat the Russians."
Wow.
And everybody just stood there for a second, and there's this hesitation. Everybody just kind of went, "We beat the Russians?" And I'm like, 4-3 USA. And I like kind of just stood away from the thing. And I was a basket case. I was just like walking around. I couldn't believe it.
And a broadcast career was begun.
There's great. If you ever want to see a wonderful story about that. So a lot of people didn't know, and legitimately did not know. But there's the movie they made, obviously. But HBO did a special called "Do You Believe in Miracles?"
Yep, I watched that.
And it came out in 2000. And I remember watching it in a hotel in Salt Lake City, and I was bawling at the end of it. And to get to know these guys a little bit that I have been able to afterwards, because they just were heroes to me. The fact that they pulled that game off, and the piece I wrote, about Herb Brooks about a month ago, how much the country needed it. We really needed, as a country, something good to happen. And these guys, they knocked off the Czechs, and and funny, the best story is that they had to play that wasn't the gold medal game.
No, everyone kind of forgets about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they're down by like 2 goals to Finland.
We were sweating it again. Yeah.
Yeah, third period. And the greatest thing that Brooks did was he doesn't come into the locker room like the entire intermission. The guys kind of debate this, but this is a good legend anyway. And so right before they're supposed to come on the ice, suddenly the door opens up and he walks into the locker room. And he walks in the middle of the locker room and he says, "If you lose this game, you'll take it to your graves." and they all just look around, and he turns around, he walks to the door, and he puts his hand on the door. He turns around one more time, and he says, "To your graves." And he opened the door and he walked out. And that was all he said. Greatest locker room speech of all time. They went out and scored goals and won the game.
Yeah, one of those things where when there's been Vikings games, or playoff games especially, where I no one expects them to win, and it's like the fourth quarter and it's close. It's so excruciating because it's like you've given me this hope. I don't know what to do with it. I don't like it. Yeah, it sounds like, especially having to listen on the radio. I mean, that's the most anxiety-inducing way to consume sports, in my opinion, because it's always, especially listening. No offense to PA, but sometimes he'll get very excited about like a incomplete second down screen. The way he takes a deep breath, you think something amazing happens, and then it's just nothing. But yeah, that's always something I wish I was alive for.
Almost like he's angling to get on an NFL Films call or something.
Or overcompensating for the fact that he's not actually from Minnesota. That's always been my theory. Anyway,
way back then. Was one more comment. Yeah, there was such an afterthought that I don't know where I got that signal from. There wasn't like anybody who was planning to carry that game.
Ham radio.
It's like even the players said. Buzzy Schneider said the other day. They going in there, they were like, you know what? Maybe we can get the bronze. And then they beat the Czechs, who they thought were going to be the silver medalists. They beat them 7-3, and they're kind of like, you know what? We're playing pretty good. We got something here. And so yeah, they went to the Russian game on a roll, and they pulled Tradiak. So the guy who gave up the goal was not Vladislav Tradiak, rather Vladimir Mushkin. Yeah. And when they pulled him, all the players looked at their coach Tikhonov like, "What are you doing? You're the best goalie in the world, and you just sat him."
He gave up that weak goal right before, like with 1 second left, right before the period, right?
Yeah, Mark Johnson came in and picked up a loose puck and put it past him.
What period was it? First or second?
End of the second.
With
literally no time left on the clock, or like 1/10 of a second on the clock. And what's funny about that is all the American players left the bench and like skated down while jumped on him in the corner and stuff like that. I mean, they could have got too many men on the ice or something for that, but everybody was so stunned and the crowd was so bananas. The referees weren't going to make that call. If you ever look at the Russians' faces at the end of the game, they're just on their sticks and they're just like with the most confused look on their faces. They just could not believe it. could not
Yeah.
even conceive that was going to happen.
Yeah, because there was a lot of ragtag guys, college guys. It's not like it is now, where it's a bunch of NHL guys playing. It was really a bunch of just young, scrappy guys. It's one of the best sports stories ever. So I definitely want people to check that article out. It is on purpleptsd.com. I'm going to cross-post it onto Vikings Territory as well tonight, so you can find it there. And also check out Mini Ice for more Minnesota and just general hockey content. We're doing a lot of cool stuff over there. We will have a new site to talk about next week, and then basically a site a week after that. So stay tuned for that. We're really excited to sleep 2 hours a night for the next year and a half. But I want to thank everybody for listening to our show. We get a lot of nice comments, and we really love doing it. So thank you to our audience. We will be back next Wednesday. Free agency pending. I don't know if I'll survive another shocking breaking news moment, but we shall see. This has been the Vikings Territory Breakdown for the 10th of March, KDLM Radio, Detroit Lakes. Skol.